So today I wanted to talk about something that's been happening around the world but hasn't happened to Nepal yet, and that is the slowdown in EV car demands. And it's happening real time outside Nepal's market, and it will slowly at some point catch up, but I'm just thinking out loud about when this would happen in Nepal. So to put things into context, there was a worldwide demand boom of EV vehicles. And by worldwide, I mean literally everywhere during the COVID years. So I'm talking about 2020 when it just about started. 2021, 22, and 23 were probably the peak years of EV car sales. And then came the decline. So 2023, and then now on to 2004 when I'm recording this video. Yeah, that's the years with decreasing EV demand from consumers like you and I. The earlier EV demand rush that a lot of car companies saw. So I'm gonna name a few. Hyundai, Kia, and then the big ones like BMW, Mercedes, that they jumped into this race a bit later than their Chinese counterparts like BYD. And as a result, during the COVID lockdown years when we were all shut home inside, what we saw was a lot of these big automakers, German included, all pledging to move to a all-electric fleet by the mid-2020s or early 2030s, and some by 2040 and a couple by 2050. So basically in the next half a century, just an all-electric fleet was pledged. And just 2 years after their pledge, a lot of car companies are now taking back their earlier promises because they realized that the demand for EVs was not as great as what they had anticipated. And no one could foresee anything. And today's video, I just wanted to go through a couple of reasons as to why something like that can happen, and link it up to where I am now in Nepal, where at the moment the year is 2024, but since 2023, especially since post-pandemic COVID lockdown, there's just been an unnatural appetite for Nepali consumers to just buy EVs, so much so that when I go around doing my car reviews and talking to different showrooms and different companies, they themselves tell me it's either a hybrid car that people are inquiring about, or it's a pure EV sort of car that people are curious about. The inquiries for a regular gasoline, petrol, diesel car is just gone down the bin. According to a lot of salesperson, the first thing they ask about are the EV options a company sells, and then they only go into whether they want other options. And that to me is quite remarkable. Like, I remember driving around in 2019, pre-COVID lockdown, you rarely saw EVs. Like, an average day commute from work to home, you would maybe see 1, 2, if you're lucky, like 5, if you're lucky. But for the most, you would not. And post-COVID, 2024, you see them at just about every single corner, every single parking lot, at least in Kathmandu, and even on the highways now. Even if Nepal does not have much of a high-speed DC fast charging network, yes, kudos to our government electricity board, NEA, Nepal Electricity Authority, for putting up at least about 52 or so fast DC chargers and a dozen or a handful of other fast chargers by companies like Hyundai, BYD, MG themselves for the cars they've sold. So other than that though, highway DC charging, even for me frankly, is quite of an anxious topic sometimes, especially during the holiday seasons when everyone travels. But anyway, coming back to my topic of EV demand, Nepal is seeing this unprecedented spike in demand for EVs at the moment, where the volume of imports compared to last year and the year before are like doubling, tripling. And that is exactly what the world saw back in 2019, 20, 21, 22, and it slowly started tapering off come 2023. And that's what I'm trying to get at with this video. What about Nepal? Will Nepal's EV demand also taper off in the same way in a couple of years, in a couple of months? Or will Nepal, because we're very proud of our hydro, nationally produced hydroelectricity that we really like to talk about with people who are not from Nepal, do you think that's enough of an incentive that we'll continue to be buying EVs into the next decade, into 2030? Or like the rest of the world, are we going to see less incentives to buy EVs come 2025 or 2026? Like, that's something that, while I'm not going to say I'm concerned about, I definitely am thinking about where the auto market in Nepal is heading to, not constantly but quite often. And here's something that I want to put into context again. The rest of the world saw a lot of tax rebates. Like when you buy an EV car, the government pays like $5,000 to $10,000 off of the sticker price of your car. So in Nepal, if this car is 66 lakhs, so which is around 55,000 plus, the government would pay 5,000, 2,000, 7,500 if you're like in California buying an American EV, like all sorts of different fancy prices, like you would just get deducted that price. And then there would be more discounts in like electricity and like charging around the station, around the country when you use specific charging networks. And so that was what was happening to incentivize early consumers to like jump onto this new technology. But over time, a lot of people bought EVs, and we're at a point where the outer world is slowly, I wouldn't say disincentivizing, but definitely not as strongly incentivizing to switch to EV technology. A lot of states in the US don't have the same big $7,500 tax credit that I just mentioned. It's very specifically given out. Federal tax credits are also given by like the government in America. Also on top of that, state tax credits. In Nepal, we have lesser taxes on EVs. That's a good thing. While a regular petrol, diesel, gasoline car is imported, we pay around 250 plus to 300% tax. And EV being imported just has to pay between 15 to about 50 to 60% in taxes, I think. I'm not exactly sure, but it's less than 100%. So EVs in Nepal are, as a result, cheaper than their gasoline counterparts and hybrid counterparts. And as globally, the rule is that they're much easier to maintain because they have less maintenance. So there's a lot of incentives in Nepal to actually get an EV because they're cheaper to buy and to run. And I feel like that's a win-win for the consumer. Not to mention annual road taxes in Nepal are cheapest for EVs, and then are in a completely different segment for like regular petrol gasoline cars. So again, another big incentive. And that it's quite astounding to me. Like, as a consumer, if I were living in any other country, EVs would be the most expensive, hybrids would be the mild, mediocre price sticker, and the gasoline, petrol cars would be the cheapest option. But here, thanks to our tax structure I just mentioned, it's exactly the opposite. You have EVs being the cheapest often, and then you have regular petrol, diesel cars being one tier higher, and somehow hybrid cars are like astronomically expensive in Nepal, which I feel like is such a shot on your own foot. Like, I don't know why we do that, but hey, it is what it is. And so, coming back to this whole initial question, what do you think will happen to EV demand in Nepal? Like, will it continue this uptick in demand, or will it plateau, and will it even decline like in the rest of the world? I also want to point out one more crucial fact about EVs, and the thing about that is there are always newcomers who like want a taste of the newest technology, who want to move out, who are EV enthusiasts, or like, hey, let me try this new technology out. Is it really cost saving? Let me jump onto that. I want to know so much about EVs. And then there are other consumers who are like, it's all right. I wouldn't say they are the opposite of enthusiasts, like they dislike EVs completely, but there is a whole bunch of people in the middle, in that broad spectrum of I love EVs to I hate EVs, where people are like meh in the middle, and they're just waiting for prices to drop or the technology to be more mainstream, affordable, more trustworthy, because EVs are still sort of in their first, second, maybe third generation, except for Teslas. But for the rest, yeah. And that's the thing. The initial uptick in demand of people who wanted to adopt EVs, those early adopters, most of them have EVs, either first-hand or second-hand EV cars by now abroad. Nepal hasn't seen that yet. EVs have just been introduced. The number of EVs in Kathmandu, in Nepal, isn't that high yet, but every couple of months there are new EVs, new Chinese EVs, new Korean EVs, new German EVs coming into town. And while I'm not saying our early adopting market is saturated yet, I am going to point out that we're not too far from that point of inflection where suddenly everyone who wanted to have an EV has an EV now. And so then that big hurdle to get non-EV enthusiasts to also jump into that bandwagon of owning EVs comes. You know what I mean? Like, in Nepal, everyone who like wants to save money wants the newest technology in their vehicles. You know how Nepali people, the moment there's like a new iPhone, a new Samsung Galaxy S whatever that comes out, you'll see it in people's pockets. Like, there'll be an announcement saying it was released in Nepal, and then within the next 2 weeks people are like, hey, this is it. And I'm like, how'd you get it that fast? Like, why did you get it that fast? I usually avoid new technologies completely because they tend to have bugs and software issues that still need some time to like debug and like to figure out. And then once I realize that, hey, it's a bit safe, then I'll be like, okay, I can adopt that too. But in Nepal, everyone's like, no, I'll be a beta tester and I'll figure that out. Like, new software, new phone, new technologies. I feel like it's the same with EV cars too. The way everyone just adopted new phones, they also adopted new EV cars and this new motor train. Because, yeah, you save money, they are cheaper because of government policies, and it's a win-win for the consumer here in Nepal. But that number of people is decreasing. Those early adopters, as I am calling them. And the uphill battle after that for companies, for all these new Chinese EV companies too in Nepal, is going to be very challenging because we also are a very, very We're not exactly people who want change to happen that quickly, and we're also not as great as adopting to these changes as quickly. And so I really feel that a lot of these companies who are focusing solely on selling EVs at the moment around 2022, 23 will have a bit of a challenge trying to sell EV cars once this demand does decrease. And I don't know. I think I'm also very enthusiastic that now that it's been a year or two that EVs have been sold quite openly in Nepal, there is a very baby, like nascent, very baby level of secondhand EV selling market being sold. Like a lot of people who bought Tata Nexons right from the get-go are now also MG-ZS EVs, Konas like this car. They want to sell their cars in the secondary market to get something else, which means a lot of people who could not afford new cars right off the bat, new EV cars in Nepal, now suddenly have the chance to own secondhand EVs here and there. Because obviously the secondhand price of a car is much lower than the sticker price right off of a new car from the showroom. And yeah, I'm very eager to see how this secondhand market for EVs takes off in Nepal, and whether it takes off or not, because I feel like that will really affect how long this uptick in EV cars in Nepal continues, the demand for EV, or whether we will see some sort of slump in the near future. Time will tell. There's a lot of factors going on. We also have to accommodate the idea of a stable, healthy economy where everyone can afford EVs and other things. Banking loans are at smaller interest rates. So yeah, there's like a lot of things factoring in together. All of these things to buy an EV that go around in the economy that we don't really think about. And all I can say is that time will tell whether we're gonna be, I feel like the lighting is beautiful here, whether the demand in EVs will stick around until the next decade or so, or whether it will eventually slump. We shall see. Anyway, I know this is a bit of a longer vlog, but I've been reading about this and like watching articles and news so much that I just wanted to like share it out here too. I don't know why this guy is overtaking up. Like, there's a double median line in the middle and there's an idiot driving completely on the right hand side. Like, I don't even know what to say to this guy. God bless. Anyway, I'll see you on the next vlog. Let me know what you think about all of this. I know it's one of the heavier vlogs I've come out with, but that's me. Alright, see you in the next one.